Do you know how many coffee trees needs to be devoted just to you if you drink 2 cups of coffee per day for the whole year? Hello and welcome to Brewbury vlog number 2. Today we'll be talking about 5 things that even coffee lovers might not know about coffee. So stay tuned. Number 1. What's the difference between Arabica and Robusta coffee? Most of you are probably familiar or have heard of these 2 types of coffee already. And one of the difference that you probably know already is that Arabica beans are usually more expensive than Robusta beans. Now there's actually reasons to why one is more expensive than the other ones. To find out why Arabica is more expensive and why Robusta is usually less expensive, you have to actually look at how the coffee plants of these 2 varieties are actually grown. The Arabica plants can only be grown with reasonable yield at higher altitude at about 1,000 meters above sea level, whereas Robusta plants are grown at lower altitude. Robusta plants are actually more resilient. They can handle harsher environment, can handle more heat, can stay in more direct sunlight. It also has resistance to insects and diseases. The appearance of the beans itself also look different. If I could show you, this is what an Arabica bean would look like. This is what the Robusta bean would look like. And lastly, and most importantly, they both taste different. Usually Robusta is described to be more bitter and has higher caffeine content, whereas the Arabica is usually described to be sweeter and has a more acidity, more flavor to it. Number 2. Which countries can grow coffee? Really, any country can grow coffee. However, it will not produce a reasonable yield or the best tasting coffee due to unsuitable climate. The area or the zone with the best climate to grow coffee is known as the coffee belt, and this is a strip or the area bounded by the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer, and it includes a large chunk of South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. Number 3. What factors contribute to the taste of coffee? So the flow goes like this: origin, variety, process, roast, and brew. These are the 5 main factors from the beginning to the end with a coffee in the cup serving to you. So let's go over some of these factors, and we'll start off with origin. Origin is the place of which the coffee is grown. The unique climates and geography will have an effect on the flavor of its produce. Some place will produce coffee with a more fruity taste note, some will have a more nutty or chocolate taste note. It really depends on the growing conditions of each locations. The next is variety. So we covered earlier the 2 main varieties of coffee, which are the Arabica and the Robusta. In reality, there's actually a lot more, countless varieties out there. The 2 mentioned earlier are actually the 2 main branches of varieties of coffee. It actually breaks down into way more, like shown here. So if you're a big fan of specialty coffee, you might have heard of the varieties such as Java or the Geisha, which are the more sought after varieties due to its rareness and its unique flavor and taste. Alright, so after you harvest the coffee cherry or the coffee berry, it has to go through a process to get rid of the fruit part, the cherry part, so that you get the coffee beans. There's actually many methods to process coffee, but the 3 main methods are the washed or the wet process, the dry or the natural process, or the semi-dry or the what you call the honey process. I won't go into too much details, but basically wet process is the most common process. It produces the most consistent flavored coffee, but it does take a lot of investment for the machinery to do this process. Dry or the natural process is actually cheaper, but it requires a lot more manual labor. The flavor you get using this process is usually described to be a lot juicier and has a heavier mouthfeel. And lastly, you have the honey process or the semi-dry. This process actually takes the best part of the wet and dry process, combine it together, and the flavor you get is usually sits within the two ends of the spectrum between the wet and the dry process. So after you get the raw beans or the green beans, you roast them. You can describe roast levels as just simply light, medium, or dark roast. Light roast will usually bring out the acidity of those beans or the sweetness, and when you move towards the darker side, you get the more bittersweet flavor and the more burnt flavor from the beans. Last but not least is the brew. There are two most popular brewing methods, which are espresso and filter. Espresso, as you may already know, is coffee which is brewed with the big espresso machines you can find at cafes or coffee shops. With this method, you use high pressure to squeeze hot water through a packed bed of coffee and you get an espresso shot. Filter, on the other hand, may include many different ways, such as the pour over, the AeroPress, the French press, the dripping method. These are all considered filter method. And filtered coffee only became very popular in recent years, especially amongst the home brewers, because you're not required to buy big espresso machines. And it is also said that filter method also brings out the best flavors for some types of coffee. So there you have it, the 5 factors that contributes to the taste of coffee. Number 4, what is single origin and why do people blend coffee? Single origin is simply coffee that comes from one origin. It can be a country, it can be a province, it can be a little village that grows that particular coffee. Usually single origin tends to have a more unbalanced flavor compared to the blended coffee. That's because you're experiencing flavors that is exclusive to that particular origin. And some people may like the uniqueness, but some might not be able to handle it. That's why coffee shops and roasters blend their own to create a more balanced flavored coffee so that everyone can enjoy. For instance, you can blend a 40% Brazil with 20% Ethiopia with another 40% Kenya to create a very balanced and unique flavored coffee. Now, another reasons why it is necessary for coffee shops to blend their own coffee is all about risk diversification. Beans from some origin may run out at some point and you will need a substitute. Therefore, by not going all in on one origin, you can replace, let's say, that 40% Brazil with something with a similar taste, such as Colombia, without a noticeably big change in flavors of your signature blend. Number 5, how many coffee trees need to be devoted just for you if you drink 2 cups of coffee per day for the whole year? Alright, quick maths. About 80 beans is needed to make a good cup of coffee. If you drink 2 cups per day, that's 160 beans per day, and that equates to 58,400 beans per year. Now let's say you only drink Arabica coffee, which takes about 3 to 5 years for the plant to mature. One tree produces about 4,000 beans. So if you divide the amount you consume by the amount it produces per tree, you'll need about 16 trees devoted just for one person, you, per year. And this is why you should treasure and cherish every cup of coffee you drink. Well, not that intensely, but maybe next time, instead of your usual grab and go coffee, maybe sit down, take your time, relax, and enjoy every sip from your cup. So today, I hope you've learned something new about coffee. If you're not a coffee drinker, I hope this video might spark a little interest inside of you to start drinking coffee. If you're already a coffee lover, I hope this video gives you a bit more knowledge on the beverage that you already love. And I'm happy to listen to all your coffee experience. You can share it in the comments or anywhere. And so stay healthy, let coffee be the liquid fuel for your ambitions, and happy drinking coffee.